after doing our test, we have determined that this electric motor for the intake flap is defective, and the VVT solenoid for the intake camshaft is also defective. So now we're going to remove the intake manifold. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this air inlet tube. So I'm going to undo the clamp over here. Alright, so here comes our inlet tube. So I'm gonna remove this upper radiator hose. Now there will be a little bit of coolant that will leak out. That's odd. It's weird that there was no coolant that leaked out. We're gonna disconnect these electrical connectors. All these plastic rivets are like breaking like crazy because they're all hardened. This connector is filled with oil. That's odd. That's very odd. So we're gonna disconnect this the hose for the purge valve. So we're gonna push that out of the way. Okay. So here comes the first throttle bolt. So here is our throttle body. I'm gonna disconnect these hoses, these coolant hoses for the throttle body. So now we're gonna get our throttle body out of the way. We are making progress. Okay, so now what's next? We're gonna remove these connectors from the intake manifold. Now we're gonna remove the bolt that bolt the intake manifold to the cylinder head. So there's one over here. There's one nut over here. Here comes the third bolt, and then there's a nut over here. Here's the nut. And then there's a fifth bolt over here. It's right over here by the electric motor. So here's the fifth bolt. So now our intake manifold should come out. So just like that, the intake manifold comes out. So here's our intake manifold. Okay. Now this is the bracket. And the bracket over here didn't have bolts on it, and the bolts that go through this bracket bolt over here on the bottom of the intake manifold. Okay, so this is the electric motor for the intake flap. Okay, so here's our intake manifold. we're gonna take it to the bench. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean off this surface here. I'm gonna clean the mating surface between the intake manifold and the cylinder head. I have already received our used intake manifold from the junkyard. I'm gonna show it to you just in a moment. I'm gonna show you the used intake manifold that we got from the junkyard, and then I'm gonna clean off this surface. Once this is cleaned, then we're gonna install our used intake manifold that we got from the junkyard. So now let's go to the bench. We are here at the bench. This is the intake manifold that we got from the junkyard. As you can see, it has numbers on it. Okay, so this is what we got from the junkyard, and this is the intake manifold that came out of the car. As you can see, they both look identical. Okay, so this is what we're gonna install. Now I'm gonna clean this off very well. I'm gonna get these electrical connectors disconnected. Okay, as you can see over here at the junkyard, they just cut these connectors. So everything looks good, everything looks the same. All right, so I'm gonna prep this intake manifold, and then I'll bring you guys back up so we can install it on the vehicle. So I got the junkyard intake manifold prepped, so we're good to go. I cleaned it as much as I could, so now I'm gonna take it to the vehicle so we can install it. So let's go install this on the car. So we're gonna install our intake manifold just like that. All right, so our intake manifold is sitting. So that's good. So now we're gonna install the bolts for the intake manifold. So now I'm gonna grab a torque wrench so we can torque the intake manifold bolts. Okay, so we're gonna torque the first bolt over here. We're gonna start with the center bolt. So right there, I hope you can hear the torque wrench click. So the first bolt is torqued. We torqued that to 216 inch-pound, which is 18 foot-pound. Right there, torque wrench clicked, so that's torqued. Now we're gonna torque this one over here. So that's torqued to 18 foot-pound, so that's good. We're gonna torque this one now. That's good, that's torqued. Alright, so that's good. We got all the intake manifold bolt torqued down to 18 foot-pound, so we're good. If you're using an inch-pound torque wrench, make sure you set it up to 216 inch-pound. So now we're gonna reconnect the electrical connectors. Alright, so we are making progress. So now the next step is installing our throttle body. Actually, I'm gonna clean the throttle while we're here. It's always good to clean this throttle body. Alright, so we got the bolt for the throttle body tightened. So now we're going to reconnect the electrical connector of the throttle body. Okay, so we are making progress. So now the next step is installing the purge valve over here, and then we're going to install the upper radiator hose, and then we're going to install the inlet tube. Now we're going to install the upper radiator hose, just like that. Alright, we are making progress, so we are almost done. Now we're going to install the air inlet tube. Alright, we got everything back together. So now I'm gonna put coolant in the radiator before we start the engine. we have replaced the intake manifold. We put coolant in the cooling system. So now we can start the engine. After we start the engine, we're gonna get a new VVT solenoid. We're gonna replace the VVT solenoid, and after that, this is gonna be fixed. So we have already fixed one problem by replacing this intake manifold with the flap motor. So this is fixed. When we're done with this, we're gonna get this VVT solenoid. I don't have this solenoid yet. It's getting late here. I'm gonna get the solenoid tomorrow. Once I get the solenoid, we're gonna install it, and after that we should be good to go. But for now, I'm gonna go in the vehicle and start the engine. So right there, as you can hear, the engine is running. The engine sounds good. So we had a intake runner flap code. We replaced the intake manifold, so we should be good there. So now I'm gonna turn off the engine. After we get the engine off, we're gonna wait for our new VVT solenoid. So I'm gonna go in the vehicle and turn off the engine. Alright, so that's good. We replaced the intake manifold. We're good to go. So now I'm gonna wait for our VVT solenoid. Once the solenoid gets here, we're gonna replace it, and then we're gonna wrap up this video. So I'm gonna get the VVT solenoid, and then I'll bring you guys back up. It is the next day. I have called the parts store to get this VVT solenoid, but unfortunately, none of the parts stores over here have this solenoid. I called the Hyundai dealership. They told me that this intake VVT solenoid is on back order, so I can't find it. I called the junkyards around here. Nobody's got it. So it looks like we're gonna have to deliver this vehicle to the customer with this bad solenoid. I told the guys at the Hyundai dealership to order it, and when the solenoid comes in, the customer is gonna bring back the vehicle so we can replace this solenoid. I told the customer that the check engine light can potentially come back because of the solenoid code, but the intake flap motor has been replaced. We put a used one here, so we're good to go. So now I'm going to put the covers back on. We're gonna test drive the vehicle. After our test drive, we're gonna wrap up this video. Maybe in the future, when I get the new VVT solenoid, I will bring you guys back up so I can show you. But for now, we're gonna end this video here.